You have to understand how things are up here.
Hey guys, it's your ghost John, and welcome to What Is It, one of our too many episodes that come out every week. Please also consider tuning into our hour-long episodes that come out every Wednesday, except last Wednesday and this Wednesday, of course, because I'm currently in Iceland and I didn't have time to do hour-long episodes for these Wednesdays. So you're just getting 3 What Is It's until I get back next week, okay? Okay. Don't forget to Google the 21CD podcast and follow us everywhere, and to check out 21cdstudios.com for updates, merch, and links to our other places. All right, let's get into it. Historically, Tartaria, or Tartary, referred to a vast, loosely defined region in Central Asia, extending from the Ural Mountains to the Pacific Ocean and southward into parts of Eastern Europe and northern China. The name Tartary was used primarily by Western European cartographers and scholars during the 16th to 19th centuries to describe lands that were largely unknown to them, populated by Turks, Mongols, and other nomadic tribes. The region, especially in the context of the Mongol Empire, was a major player in Eurasian history. At its peak in the 13th century, the Mongol Empire controlled much of the land known as Tartary. Genghis Khan and his descendants ruled vast stretches of Eurasia, and their influence helped shape the history of Russia, China, and much of the Middle East. Tartary was home to numerous nomadic tribes, including the Tartars, from whom the region gets its name, and these tribes played key roles in the movement of goods and ideas and tech across the Silk Road. Due to the limited contact between Western Europe and the vast expanse of Central Asia, Tartary was often shrouded in mystery. Western maps and texts from the Middle Ages and early modern period frequently depicted the area as some kind of unknown or mystical land. By the 19th century, as European explorers and colonial powers began to map and control more of Central Asia, the term Tartary kind of just fell out of use, and it was replaced with more specific designations like Siberia, Mongolia, or Turkestan, as the geopolitical realities of the region kind of became more solidified. In recent years, an alternative history narrative has emerged online, particularly within some conspiracy theory circles, claiming that Tartaria was not just a geographical designation, but it was actually an advanced global civilization that was deliberately erased from history by some kind of elite. And this idea is often linked to other theories that involve suppressed knowledge or hidden technology and, of course, global manipulation. Now, people who believe in this theory argue that Tartaria was not just a loose collection of nomadic tribes, but actually an advanced civilization with superior technology, incredible architecture, and wild knowledge that rivaled or even surpassed other known ancient civilizations. And we couldn't be talking about Tartaria without talking about the Mud Flood. And it's this supposed global catastrophe that buried much of the world's architecture and technology under layers upon layers of mud. According to this theory, the event wiped out the Tartarian civilization, and its remnants were completely hidden or covered up. Now, many conspiracy theorists point to 19th and early 20th century architecture, such as these grand buildings with domes and spires, as evidence of Tartarian influence, and they claim that structures like the World's Fairs or grand palaces and monumental buildings were part of a global Tartarian empire that was later falsely attributed to other cultures or erased from history. And some proponents of the theory say that historical maps that depict Tartary as evidence are actually talking about the kingdom of Tartaria. They argue that because the term Tartary appeared on maps for centuries, it must have referred to something more substantial than a vague region or some little collection of tribes. Obviously, now we're starting to talk about the Great Reset realm, and that notion is that a powerful group or elite set of people has the ability to sort of reset global history, and they've done so multiple times. The Great Flood is also a cataclysmic Great Reset, and all of these events erase evidence of past advanced civilizations like Tartaria to maintain this control over humanity. And proponents of that point to the architectural grandness of certain old buildings, particularly those found in North America and Europe. And they say it's evidence that these structures were part of the Tartarian Empire. They argue that the sophistication of these buildings couldn't have been achieved by the societies that we traditionally credit with them. And that leads us to believe that maybe there's some kind of cover-up of their true origins. Just look at Capitol buildings or old churches, ancient churches, or any of those domed structures, and just those buildings that seem like they couldn't have been built by using a horse and buggy. Those are the buildings, and they've all got the cornerstones stamped with their dates in the mid-1800s or whatever. Those are the ones they're talking about. The 19th century world fairs are an example as well of this supposed evidence, particularly those in Chicago in 1893 and Paris in 1889. They're often highlighted because the claim is that these grand buildings were sometimes described as temporary structures, but they were actually remnants of Tartarian architecture that is just no longer there. Historical maps from the 17th and 18th centuries would depict Tartary covering vast areas of Eurasia. And that is further evidence, according to these conspiracy theorists, that Tartaria, whatever you want to call it, was a major world power at one point in history. Now, we also have this theory that Tartaria was extremely technologically advanced, and they had free energy and anti-gravity technology and other innovations that have been hidden from modern society. So, conspiracy theorists argue that this knowledge had to be erased for some reason or hidden by elite groups to prevent the public from accessing it. And if you're wondering, well, where's the real evidence, though? These are all just ideas. Is there any archaeological evidence? Are there any pictures? Turns out there are photographs of ruins or partially buried buildings that conspiracy theorists claim are remnants of the mud flood event. And these images often show streets that appear to be several feet below the current ground level, or buildings with what seem to be buried first floors, which are interpreted as evidence of some kind of global cataclysm that buried much of Tartaria's infrastructure. People also say that the disappearance of Tartary from modern historical narratives is evidence of a deliberate cover-up. They claim that the transition from Tartary to more modern terms like Siberia, like we said before, or Mongolia, Central Asia, in the 19th century was just orchestrated to hide the true nature of the Tartarian Empire. It's pretty crazy stuff. Governments might want to keep this advanced tech out of public knowledge to maintain control over energy sources, industry, and innovation. That sounds extremely close to home, doesn't it? If free energy or other groundbreaking tech from a past civilization was uncovered, it would disrupt entire industries and undermine powerful corporate and governmental interests. Of course it would. By erasing Tartaria from history, the global elite rewrote history to fit their desired narrative. And this allows them to sort of establish a false sense of human progress and implies that modern Western civilization is just the pinnacle of achievement. Acknowledging Tartaria would challenge the idea that modern society is the most advanced or the most enlightened, and that would definitely threaten the legitimacy of power structures. Some people say that eliminating Tartaria from history would also allow the elite to maintain ideological control over the masses. If Tartaria really represented some kind of more enlightened or free society, then hiding its existence helps suppress alternative systems of governance or social organization that would make us better as a society and as individuals. The global population is thereby conditioned to accept existing systems of authority without really questioning whether there might be better or more advanced alternatives. You gotta wonder why all the world leaders have like their own little plan for what's gonna happen after the world ends, and they all emerge from their bunkers and they somehow think that they're still gonna have control, because they do. Isn't that crazy? Like, oh, just in case everything goes to hell, we gotta make sure we have a plan to maintain order when we come out the other side as cave people in a destroyed world. Heck no, bro. So another idea is that Tartaria had access to advanced spiritual and esoteric knowledge, and that enabled a deeper understanding of human consciousness and the universe. By hiding this knowledge, elites allegedly keep the masses disconnected from their spiritual potential. And we know that there's demons in the tech, bro. Eliminating personal empowerment and societal growth is a crime against humanity, but they are doing it. Let's talk a little bit more about the mud flood. The mud flood is this conspiracy theory that claims a massive global event buried entire cities and civilizations under layers of mud, and it completely erased their existence from mainstream history. It's closely tied to the Tartaria conspiracy theory, of course, with proponents arguing that this cataclysm covered up the advanced architecture and all the tech of the Tartarian Empire. The central idea is that at some point in relatively recent history, a global flood of mud just occurred somehow, and it buried everything, entire cities. And people say that this event took place in the 18th or 19th century, but some places it happened even earlier. And they believe this cataclysm is not mentioned in historical records because it has been deliberately hidden by elites to suppress knowledge of the past. Unlike conventional floods, which are typically associated with like rising water, the mud flood is described as a rapid, overwhelming movement of thick mud that submerged entire urban areas. The cause of this flood varies within the theory, with some saying it was a natural phenomena like earthquakes or volcanic eruptions, while others claim it was an engineered event by some global elite or some god or some kind of war of the gods between heavenly beings. Mud flood theorists point to old buildings that appear to have been buried and that have lower floors beneath the ground as key evidence of this event. And these buildings are often found in major cities across Europe and North America and Russia, and they seem to have ground floors that are partially or fully underground, with windows and doorways obscured by dirt. This architectural feature is interpreted as proof that the buildings were originally constructed at ground level, but they were at one point flooded with mud, and now the building is smaller than it used to be because the rest of it is underground. And the buildings we're talking about are all the crazy ones that you see when you go to big cities, not the skyscrapers, the big ones made of marble and stone and brick, but mainly massive stone and granite, and the ones that make up the Capitol buildings and the epic churches from the 1800s. Those are the buildings. Cities like Paris and London and Moscow, they are often cited for having buildings with lower floors that seem to be buried beneath the current street level, and there's not really an explanation as to why. Seattle is also frequently mentioned, where parts of the city's original ground level were submerged due to some kind of rising land phenomenon, and that led to the construction of new streets on top of the old ones. And mainstream history, of course, and architecture are said to be part of this new cover-up now that says that none of this Tartarian Empire ever existed, and humanity sort of starts over with this lower level of tech for some reason, but the global elite still enjoy the benefits of what Tartaria was. So the mud flood then would have to be erased from historical records because it's part of the cover-up. Governments, academic institutions, and the media, they're said to be complicit in this suppression, and they hide the true history of humanity in order to sort of maintain control over society forever. And if people knew the truth about the mud flood and the advanced civilizations that existed before it, then people would start to question the legitimacy of modern governments. So that's why the cover-up. Pretty crazy stuff. And conspiracy theorists claim to have all this evidence of this mud flood. It's really quite interesting. And this is one of the topics where you could definitely do a full hour-long episode on this. So if you guys are interested in that, feel free to let me know in the comments. I would love to do a full episode on Tartaria and the mud flood, because this one is a head scratcher and it's got me wondering. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff on it, and the more I see, the more I believe it. It's crazy. So what do you guys think of the mud flood? Do you think Tartaria existed? And do you want a longer episode on this topic? Let me know. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, don't drink the water and question everything.